All right, so we are live. So welcome to Intuitive You on Oneness Talk Radio. This is Abby Gooch, and I am just so excited to be here with probably the most important man in my life. This man just traveled halfway across the world with me. And it was really, an inspired intuition that I think was both on his part and my part. And this amazing man is my father. And I don't know if you can see him yet, but in a few minutes when he introduces himself, you'll be able to meet him. But what I love about this experience is it was so spontaneous. It was so like, hey, in the moment, what does your intuition say? What does your intuition say? And even though there was fear, the love was even greater. So, with that, I want to introduce Don Gooch, who's from right now in Idaho, I believe. And I just want to welcome you to the show. So, welcome, Dad.
Good morning. Hello, everyone.
And so, wherever you are in the world, if it's your evening or afternoon, just really take this information in and to really feel your heart and your intuition and where you're connected, and just notice, where is your intuition calling you? So, a lot of people can feel their intuition in different areas of your body. I usually feel it in my gut. A lot of people feel it in their heart, but it's really that just deep knowing, that deep knowing of truth. And when you access and listen to that truth within you, you're guided moment by moment to fulfill your soul's purpose. And so I think both my dad and I knew that this was part of my soul's purpose. And it's one of those things that kept coming back, right? No matter how many times I delayed the trip, it kept coming back. Like, I know I really need to do this. So maybe just take a moment to, think about something that's on your heart and what you feel keeps coming through. What is that deep desire, that inner nudge, or that knowing that says, man, I really need to do this, right? And as you listen to that and you start taking action steps towards that, you find yourself living that. And it's almost effortless, right? It's like you're taking action, but you're not forcing, you're not trying to figure it out, you're just allowing, and you're trusting that wisdom within you. So, Dad, I'm curious about how you kind of felt your intuition and what kind of prompted you to say yes, right? Because you didn't have to. I literally picked him up from the airport. He was just coming to see me in San Diego. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to Ecuador? And he's like, I kind of felt him energetically saying yes, but he's like, let me think about it. Let me think about it. And then as we came down to it, he did end up saying yes. So I'm just curious, Dad, what was that? Where did that intuitive yes come from within you?
Yeah. Well, I guess I consider myself a slow processor. I don't usually make big decisions very quickly. But I guess I looked at it also as kind of a timing thing, that it seemed to be falling into some kind of a synchronicity. And I do believe in synchronicity. And so I tried to be in a position where I could feel like the spirit was interceding and directing it at this time.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's fascinating. So, when we feel that energy, you could talk about spirit or life force, there is always something greater than us. So, as we followed that energy of timing that felt right, we actually did obviously make it to the orphanage in Ecuador. And we found out when we got there, there was just a very short window of time that we have to help raise money for these children to stay together, so they don't lose the building, right? So there was a timing thing that was beyond us. And so when we listened to that intuition, we realized that we're serving something greater than ourselves, right? And so we're always supported in that, I believe, right? Because it's the call to unity, it's called something higher, oneness, right? And so I think just kind of notice, again, where your intuition is guiding you and how that might be serving another. And that's usually where you're going to get your greatest fulfillment, is when you serve another, because we're all connected. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dad.
Not at this time, no. I will let everyone know that I really was not very familiar with the project, the orphanage in Ecuador. So I basically went down there with not a lot of pre-knowledge as far as what the needs were or how important the timing was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what I think is fascinating is intellectually you didn't know that, but a part of you knew, right? Like I believe your intuition knew and then the facts kind of followed. And so, a lot of times too, like I know for me, I'll get like stomach aches or like gut aches if I'm like kind of off path, right? Like kind of like, hey, stop going down that road. Go down this one. What feels right? What feels light, right? And then you're going to find and feel this place of alignment. And that alignment feels like clarity, it feels like truth, it feels like knowingness. Um, and then it's almost like each step is provided. So there's an affirmation I often use is, take the next step where love has paved the way before you, meaning your intuition is going to say, hey, go here. This feels right. Right. And then from that place, it's like the steps underneath you are already supported, right? And so if you just trust that you are connected to the whole and your intuition is constantly guiding you to be in alignment with that moment to moment, then you can really trust yourself. And if you feel like maybe you're off track in a moment, okay, what do I need to do to realign in this moment? And that connection, it'll feel, I can even do it now, it'll feel like, if you imagine just golden light beaming through the top of your head down through your heart to your core, it's almost like you're on soul spotlight, right? Like you're in alignment with the light, the higher part of you moving through your body as you. And again, it feels really good. So if you have fears that are coming up in your mind or getting images or kind of clouding your vision, those are just that, right? They're fears. But that light of pure alignment will feel good in your body. You'll know that it's the right decision. And I often call it intuitive resonance in my courses, where it's like your body, like I said, knows, right? It's like if you were to listen to some music and like a little key felt off, you'd be like, oh, that's not quite right? But when it's in harmony, there's resonance. So if you allow that energy of that light to flow through your body and you feel that resonance and that harmony, then you know you are in alignment with your soul's path, right? And like I said, if you ever feel like something's off, well, then just how do you move back in? So I don't know, Dad, is there any stories or experiences you'd like to share of moving in alignment with your intuition, or maybe even feeling off and then getting back on? How you did that?
Well, I think that we do have a feeling sometimes whether something is the right course or the right decision for us to make. I also believe that there's times when we really don't know for sure. It's kind of like we do walk in faith, and sometimes we make a decision and we really don't know for sure if it's the right decision or not, because the clarity of that decision or the rightness of that decision is something that will become more evident later on. So it's kind of a matter of going by faith and by feeling, and trying to be open to what presents itself at the time. And then if the door opens, you move through it.
Yeah. And I think, going back to you'll be provided for. It's funny, one of my neighbors, I remember, I don't know, months ago, she was like, the universe always provides, right? So to know when a door opens that there is a way, right? And so to trust that so you don't have to live in fear. And you can just trust that, you are provided for. Um, I think that's a great word, faith. There's one of the courses I taught, I remember I talk about something about, faith instead of fear, right? So when your fears come up, how do you move into faith? Because you're living on purpose, right? And so one of the honestly easiest ways to make money is to have a really strong purpose and to have love driving that, because that really is the greatest power, right? So when you really believe in something and you have a strong faith about it, and your heart's behind it, that energy of love can carry you. right? And so I just, recommend each and every one of you listening, like maybe even put your hand on your heart, maybe your other hand on your belly, and just really asking yourself, what do I believe in? What is my purpose? What do I feel called to share and to teach and to be a part of, right? And then feel that energy of love in your heart and that knowing in your belly of guiding you, right? That as you have that faith, maybe your mind doesn't know, but again, there's part of you, your intuition, that does know. So, yeah, absolutely. My goodness. So I know you're not always a big talker. I'm trying to think what I could ask you. I guess, has there ever been any challenges in your life where you feel like you've been able to use your intuition to overcome them? Right? Because I know for me, sometimes there's a discernment of the mind versus the intuition, and it can kind of take me or anybody on crazy, like whatever. But then to actually come back into that centeredness of being. So, has there ever been any challenge, whether internal, external, that you have felt like you've been able to navigate your way through by using your intuition?
Well, maybe this isn't a direct answer to that question, but I do feel like a lot of times we like to um, have some kind of assurance and we think through things as far as, should we call it a longer term plan or some way of navigating the future. But it also seems like sometimes that's just not available. And unfortunately, and it's not our choice, but we feel like we're almost on a day-to-day thing and looking for something to seem like it's the right thing to do that day, some opening for the choices that are going to be made that day. Because the universe to me is a very, very complex thing. I have tried in some ways to figure these things out. I've read a lot of books, done a lot of thinking, tried to discern the nature of reality, really. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's going to be far beyond anything that I can intellectually wrap my head around. And so the answer sometimes it just seems is let's get out of mind, let's just live in the moment. And there is a place for, I believe, rational thinking, and we don't discard what is practical, but there's sometimes that the decisions we make have to be in the moment, and we just kind of go with, should we call it the flow?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think you're constantly being moved moment to moment too, right? When you're listening to your intuition, what feels right in the moment. It's kind of like the river, right? Like you're flowing with it. You have a current taking you, but you're also listening, right? To where I'm going to go this way and this way so I can feel even in harmony with the river and with the flow.
Yes.
So, what was your path? I know that you've been really on a spiritual path for a really long time. What called you to, wanting to learn more and, be on this path of just like spiritual involvement?
Well, I think again, when we look at life, there's a lot of intricacies to life. There's a lot of things we don't understand. But for me to feel like life is an accident, I don't believe that. It does seem like we're here for a reason, a purpose. And I guess my quest has been trying to find out what that purpose is and to be in a spiritual position, a sense of spirit and mind that I can know the guidance and make the choices that seem to be intended for me. Um, Sometimes I wonder if there is a destiny. Some of these questions I don't believe have answers. We may explore them, we may read books, we may come to some kind of conclusions. But then again, sometimes that conclusion seems like it has to be adjusted because we have new experiences, we have new thoughts that come in. And so we try to figure out from that standpoint, well, just what is real? What is the wise thing? What is even our path? So I kind of think it's life is the great mystery. And we have to almost accept it as a mystery because we are never going to figure this thing out, if you want to call it a thing.
Mm.
So I just kind of want, as for myself, is um, to be ready when certain situations come up, that I'm in the right place and making the right decision at that time.
Mm. And I think there's a way you can actually find certainty within the uncertainty, right? Because I think there's like a fear that can come up when we don't feel like we know what's next. So even though, again, like we talked about earlier, if the mind doesn't know, there is a certainty within you that knows. It's almost like peace be still, like that calm, right? So if you can center yourself, and like what I often do is put, one hand on my belly or one hand on my heart, the other hand on my belly, and just center, move into that place of centeredness. And then there is that certainty, right? That really allows us to feel safe within the uncertainty of what we may or may not know, right? Because like again, I think that a part of us knows, but there's also free will, right? There's also choice. So how we can be in alignment with that, I think, is the best way. Um, let's see, is there any practices or ways of being that you cultivate to really just make your connection stronger?
Well, I guess again, that has varied through the years as far as what I seem to center on or what I feel is kind of what I want to be working on at the time. Um, when I was down there with you last week or the week before, I walked into the bookstore that you have there,
Mhm.
and of course, I'm a person of books. I lean toward being able to sort through books, take my time, read through them, let them kind of be my meditation. There was a book I picked up, and I've only gone about a quarter of the way through it, but I'm very impressed with what I read in that book so far. And it's like I read a line, and then I have to read that line over a number of times. I've gone back. So again, I've only gone through maybe a quarter of that book, but I feel like it is my meditation. It is what I'm needing at this point right now. I'll share the name of the book. It's called The Direct Way. It appears to be written by a person who is a Zen Buddhist. Um, Zen to me incorporates an awful lot of Taoism, which Taoism is something that I have found very interesting to assimilate with a lot of the other religious viewpoints. Um, this gentleman is basically talking about, he uses the word awareness. Awareness being synonymous with whatever you would rather use that term, such as consciousness or the universe, source. I mean, he says, you can, basically use any kind of a word that you want. It doesn't matter what it is. He uses the word awareness because what he's basically trying to say, again, I've only read through a quarter of the book, so maybe I shouldn't be commenting to such an extent on it, but I believe that it is pretty much going to be what the book just delves into further and tries to make more clear. But basically, it's saying that we have this personality, okay? Um, and it is something that we are to an extent born with, but is also something that is acquired by us and is something that we use to identify ourselves with. And we can become very much limited to this personality that we have acquired from our own choices, our society, our parents, and whatever. So, what he's basically saying is that there is something beyond this limited personality that we are so attached to. And he calls that awareness, that there is something that we can look at that is far greater than this personality. I believe that he stated that our personality is something that is not only changing, but will perhaps end. It's not like something eternal. I'm not going to debate whether I agree with him or not agree with him on that. I believe that is part of the point that he is making in at least the first chapters. But what he is also stating is that this something greater, which again, he uses the term awareness, is something that is forever. It was here before we came into existence, and it will be here when we are no longer here. So this awareness is something that is, well, I think it would relate to some of the things that you see in literature as the detached observer. We can observe our body, we can observe our mind, we can observe our feelings, but our body, our mind, and our feelings is a limited part of who we are, because we are also part of this awareness, which is something that we cannot define. Again, like the Tao. Of course, the Taoists will say that the Tao is something that cannot be named, it cannot be described, because if you try to do something like that, then you are limiting something that is far beyond our conception. So this awareness that he's referring to is something that is far beyond what we can conceive, that we can imagine. It is not something that can be scientifically located. It's not scientifically examined, measured in any way, because it is beyond those limited forms of perception and that we can do. So anyway, I'm very impressed, because it does seem that there is something here that has to do with something greater than ourselves, and that we need to focus on this awareness instead of our personal self. We're too centered on body again, mind and feelings. We need to back off from that and look at our lives and look at our experiences from a position of this great awareness. This great awareness is something that is common to all of us and is connected with all of us. That is why we are also connected with everyone. This thought that we are all one is based upon, in his theory, the fact that this awareness is a part of something that we all are a part of. So we are individuals, okay, but we are all part of, it's part of our being to be a part of this greater awareness, this greater consciousness. I guess most of my readings and my thoughts have been, we use the word consciousness, but I do kind of like the idea of what he's calling awareness, because awareness is something that it describes our ability to watch our minds, our bodies, and our feelings. And we can drop back and realize whatever happens to us is this limited self, whatever we're experiencing, feeling, thinking at the time, that this greater awareness is really our true being. In reading the Hindu literature, which I'm it has been kind of a focus of my study. The Upanishads are something that I've enjoyed studying through the years to a fairly large extent. Not saying that I totally understand it, but one of the precepts that is so common throughout all the Upanishads, and again, there's many Upanishads, and they're written by different people at different times, and their viewpoints are basically in line, but basically also somewhat different. But one of the great thoughts that is expressed in the Upanishads and in other Hindu literature is this thing of a self, lowercase self, and a uppercase self, capital self, something that is bigger. That would also equate to something called, in their literature, Brahman, okay? Not Brahman the God, but Brahman, this large, let's call it awareness, consciousness, something much bigger than ourselves. I've read people who have associated the concept of the Tao, okay, again, that I mentioned earlier, is something beyond explanation, beyond definition, beyond any kind of a scientist's ability to quantify or to locate. Brahman, again, can relate very similar, at least in my understanding. We can all interpret things very differently, but in my understanding, Brahman is very similar to the Tao. That's how I enjoy reading it and acquiring something from the Upanishads and the Hindu teachings that I can relate to what this gentleman is writing from a Zen perspective as awareness. It's an overall something greater than we are. It's the large self. It's the something that's eternal, that's connected with all of us. We are all a part of Brahman. We are all a part of another term they use is Atman. People have different maybe associations. I consider maybe the Atman that's referred to as that part of Brahman that is maybe particular to us, but it is all part of this greater thing of Brahman, of Tao. And this gentleman in that book that I mentioned is basically, it's a very short book, and it's something that to me it's not instructional. It's a meditation, and what it's doing is it's saying we need to focus, give time and energy to, instead of focusing on the personality, the feelings, and our body, all things that are important and all things that we need to be aware of, and exert as much wise shepherding as we can. But the thing that we need to be looking at this is from a wider viewpoint, the standpoint of awareness, that we are a detached witness observer of something that is lesser than this thing that we're all a part of. I read just a little bit last night on my next chapter. And again, I'm taking this thing very slowly because it's kind of like I'm trying to digest it and actually make it a part of me. So this part last night was, again, saying, okay, so I presented, basically he's saying, and I'm kind of just paraphrasing what he's saying. Here's this big picture of this great awareness, okay? But let's bring it into a little more of a context of somewhat more personal, okay? And then he brings it into a heart, so that, and it's not the emotional heart. This is not the heart that is, and nothing wrong with the emotional heart, but the emotional heart can kind of come and go. And he's saying, take this big awareness, bring it into an emotional, into a heart center that is a loving heart. So basically he's equating awareness and a feeling of a unity and a feeling of love that is more of a heart-centered thing. So again, I probably ought to stop at that point, because that's kind of, again, about a quarter of the way through the book. And that's what I have been able to assimilate for myself at that point in the book.
Beautiful. I love you just sharing the concept of unity and the sense of presence, right? Something greater than us, moving through us, connecting us to each other and to the all, right? So I'm curious about, some of your experiences working directly with the kids at the orphanage. How was that, walking in and just, having these 21 kids, all over you, and just, experiencing your connection from that place?
Well, let's see, how do I even address that? When you look at the world, I guess I see it as a world that its, shall we call it, problems, challenges, whatever you want to refer to it, are so overwhelmingly large. When you land into Ecuador, you realize that you're in a third world country. Driving from Guayaquil to Cuenca and beyond where we went. It's even more evident, even though we have the United States. It's not to say that we don't have third world country situations even in this country. But I guess it can be almost overwhelming when you see the great need that people have. People are barely surviving. There's a lot of people who do not have enough money to really eat properly, to eat. Their shelter is very, very minimal. They're surviving almost day to day. So, here we land into this situation with these 21 kids in the orphanage in Azugas. And it's quite evident that they are living in a very precarious situation. Um, we got a nice tour through the different rooms in the facility, and the children were, of course, with us. So we got to feel um, their, well, shall we call it, need, and their inability to provide for themselves. So this orphanage being the best thing that they can experience. Um, the orphanage itself, I guess I'll go into that. I took pictures of the different rooms and stuff. It's a very, I think the word modest understates it. It is barely a livable situation there. They did seem to have adequate plumbing and wiring. I was able to plug in and charge my phone and charge the computer. Um, I watched what the children were eating because when we first got there, they were sitting down to lunch. The younger ones were being fed first in a dining room, and then a table was being set up for the ones in the older set in a neighboring room. I guess my heart was uh, concerned a bit because I'm watching these little children and they're hungry. Okay, they did have food. It appeared to me lentils and potatoes. Um, it it was not a lot of perhaps even nutritional value, but they seemed to be as healthy as far as I could tell looking at them. But as we were later to find out, the facility that they are in, again, is kind of on the edge of town, a town of, I looked it up afterwards. It didn't appear to be this big, but it said it was 40,000 people and that the greater area had 80,000. Didn't strike me that large, but you could see that, it was in a fairly nice location near town. There was a farmer's market going on when we arrived, not too far from there. So perhaps they can get, food from that. And, food is relatively inexpensive there in Ecuador, especially at farmers markets and that sort of venues. The building itself, we were to find out later because Abby and I were part of, shall we call it a board meeting at that facility. The young woman, I would guess her in her 30s, has I kind of marvel at her ability to handle the situation. I mean, you're looking at kids, I don't know, what were they, 4 to 5 years old to 17, 18, some kind of a range like that. And they're kids, The younger ones are kind of, they want to hug you and they're all over you. They're climbing up trees. One of them looked like it was up a tree far enough that I was kind of like, I wonder if I need to get under this little guy because he could fall out of the tree. But this young woman is so very dedicated. My admiration went out to her. My heart went out to her and what she is doing. It's quite obvious that she is giving her life for these kids, these 21 kids. And I think they're probably at capacity, but they're like a big family. And that family atmosphere is created by, her name was Daisy. I don't know what her name in Spanish would be, but Abby referred to her as Daisy. And her ability to create the atmosphere that was very prevalent in that setting, in that group of people, was palpable. Okay. I mean, it was something that I admired and that I have great respect for what she has been able to do there. So, kind of sidelined there a little bit. Daisy, Abby had called Daisy, I believe, fairly spontaneously, that morning or the night before, because our plans were a little bit flexible and we didn't know exactly what our schedule was. Daisy was able to put together a meeting with the person who owns the property. And again, I'm not totally familiar with exactly the setup of this, their funding. I'm just not quite sure. But Daisy brought in at a very appropriate time. We were able to tour and to be with the kids for a certain period of time. And then I was not aware of all the arrangements. In came this gentleman who's probably somewhere in his 50s, I would guess, perhaps late 50s, and his son-in-law to be the interpreter for Abby in her class that she was going to be teaching these children. So the son-in-law had spent, I believe, 10 or 12 years in the United States, so his English was quite good. And he was able to, communicate with the children and translate in a way that they seemed to be following it and enjoying what was being taught. At the end of or maybe I guess it was in between, there was kind of like should we call it a board meeting? I don't think it was necessarily intended for that, but with Daisy, the gentleman who owns the property, and the interpreter, and I don't just remember his name, but he did a very good job. But again, he had the English and was able to communicate between our English and their Spanish. We learned then that this building that these children were in is, shall we call it, condemned. They have 2 months to make a certain amount of improvements. Through the translator, I was curious, well, just what is the nature of the improvements that need to be made in order for them to be able to stay in there for a little bit longer. I'm not totally clear how long it can be, but I believe it was, as far as the length of time, but within 2 months, my understanding is they need to make certain improvements to the building. And it sounded like it perhaps had to do with wiring and plumbing. Again, I'm not sure of that, but I did ask through the interpreter, just how much money are we looking at to make the improvements that the government officials are looking at in order so the children can stay in the facility. And that was $3,000. So it would seem to me that the first thing that needs to be done, because if this place is indeed going to be leveled down, there's going to take time in order to build a new one. So the owner of this facility, I understood, was going to be putting a sign on the property fairly soon. So I think, as far as the orphanage itself and what needs to be done at this time is we critically need $3,000. And Abby can explain to you a little later some possibility that we're looking forward to having maybe a company that might help. There's nothing definite on it. So it's not something we want to rest our hopes on and not look to make some find other ways to bring in this amount of money. But the $3,000 is going to be important because my understanding is that will give another perhaps 6 months of time to go ahead and try to fund a new building that is being talked about. There is really no place to build on. I had heard something mentioned before I got there that the idea was hopefully to be able to build on to the existing facility there. I saw, and I looked around, I looked out different places. I see no place to build on. This is something that, I don't know if it's possible to put even more money into it and make this something that's viable for a long-term period. I don't want to totally negate the idea of being able to have it used as a long-term facility. But again, it would probably need considerable amount of input of money. The idea of tearing it down and building another one, I did ask them because I told them I'm not familiar with your building timeframes here. But the gentleman who, again, owns the property said to build the facility that they're having in mind would take a year. So my question is then, of course, so what happens to these children during this period of time that if the building is taken down and a new one is being constructed, what happens to these children who are like a family? They I can see the interaction, and the older ones are helping the younger ones. We're looking at something that is what is going to happen in the meantime? What is going to happen to these children? Are they going to be put into foster homes, which that was kind of what I was led to believe during the period. That is not something that is ideal because, again, it appears to be that they are a family. So you're just asking for my impressions of the what I saw there and what the needs I see are, and just the overall impression of what is and what needs to be done. That would be what I would take away from the orphanage.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And if you'd like to donate, you can go to oneheartglobal.co and then you can click on the donate button, and just, do whatever your heart feels moved to do. We're working with a company called Goya, which is the biggest like food company in southern South America. And there's still some, I think they sell in North America as well, but it's primarily down there. So we've been in contact with them. So we're hoping that works. But like my dad said, in the meantime, we want to be able to get them as much funds as possible. And anything, extra would just be to build the new facility anyways. So it's definitely going to be contributing to the well-being of them. So yeah, again, that's oneheartglobal.co. And then you can click on the donate button. What was your experience of just emotionally connecting with these kids? Knowing that it's funny because I noticed how a lot of the little boys would go kind of follow him because you could just feel that they really, wanted to feel that father figure. But what was your experience, Dad, of just emotionally connecting with the kids?
Mhm. Well, yes, you realize that these children do not have the normal uh, family situation of a father and a mother and a small family grouping. So yes, they're going to feel drawn towards someone who is, in my sense, a male person, because they probably don't see that very much. But of course, yes, I was drawn to just the need that was there and a desire to help in whatever way that I can.
Yeah, it was really sweet. You can see some of the pictures on the website. It was just really adorable to watch. So Um, and yeah, if you want to help build out the project too, when we get to that point, you can always email us. So, and my direct email is Abby, ABBY at lifeforceconnection.com if you want to touch base. And Dad, I usually just promote people and their businesses on this show, but I don't know that you even have a business going right now. I mean, you're pretty much retired, but is there anything you want to add or have people reach out to you or anything you'd like to share with people?
Yeah. Well, if Abby does have a nonprofit, I also have a nonprofit that is a 501c3. And if people are needing some special, write-off possibilities with that, they can also use my 501(c)(3).
Looks like his computer froze on that end. But anyways, yeah, we're just so grateful to be able to share this information with you and kind of let what is happening in Ecuador. And as you can see, his heart is so big and he's just really here to support and help. And I just feel like, yeah, if there's any questions you have, we can also open the lines. You can call 858-692-4555 if you have any questions for myself or my father if he pops back on. I think he probably will be right back on. I think your computer froze a little bit, so we're just popping back on.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, it did freeze on me.
Yeah. So, yeah, if there's anything else you'd like to share, I often, ask people, is there any, mantra, words of wisdom, anything that people can walk away with that you would like to, have them just kind of keep in their back pocket, so to speak?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. No, I think that I have covered about what I can cover. I would say that what I said about this book and what I elaborated on that is something that I feel is going to be helpful for me, and I think for anyone who would like to consider, following up on that kind of a meditation.
Mhm, mhm. Awesome. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here, for saying yes to following your intuition and doing all your amazing studies. And yeah, we look forward to, just hearing more. Anything else? I mean, is there any other way you want people to reach out to contact you at all? Do you have an email or way that people?
No, that's fine. I mean, if somebody wanted to contact me, they can find me through you.
All right, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Dad. Love you. And have a blessed day, everybody. And may you just allow your intuition to guide you to that next step where you're feeling like you're being called to serve something even greater than yourself and in turn contributing to the whole. So, namaste, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye now.